I feel like when you're a kid and you're preparing for adulthood, there are certain things that you just expect to suck, right? Like taxes suck, or chores suck, or throwing your back out when you sneeze sucks. But I do feel like there is this blind spot where people don't prepare kids and teenagers and young adults for friendship breakups that are kind of inevitable and absolutely suck.
Welcome to the Love Siren Podcast, your weekly dose of enchantment for the modern romantic. I'm Dahlia, your queer, poly, feminist witch, guiding you into your most magnetic, irresistible siren self. If you're craving ocean-deep love, delicious confidence, and results that last, you've just unlocked the right portal. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get into it.
The topic of friendship breakups just keeps coming up in my world. I have multiple people in my life who are going through really dramatic friendship changes, including relationships that they've had for years and years that are going through a pretty massive change. And I feel like friendship breakups aren't spoken about enough. We focus a lot on romantic breakups, but friendship breakups are its own level of discomfort that I think is worth dissecting. So, in my opinion, I think that there are a few different types of friendship breakups. The first, and I think is the most common, is the slow fade, which there's not really any conflict that happens. There's just a lot of distance. And, I picture like a lobster being boiled, right? Where it's like it doesn't even really notice it's happening until it's too late. Then, of course, we have the explosive ending where there's some kind of betrayal or fight or rupture that you can't fix. There's an outgrowing. This was a huge one for me, especially during the pandemic when I found a lot of people in my life didn't have the same values that I did. And that was really coming to a head during that time. There's a one-sided effort dynamic where maybe you are the only one who is putting in all that time and effort to make plans, to remember their birthday, all of that stuff. And then the last one is the mirror friendship, where either they trigger your wounds all the time or you trigger their wounds. This is probably my second most common one. And I also want to preface this entire conversation with saying that I think we can think of breakups as being objectively bad, but I really want to encourage you to remember and think of them as a sign that you are leveling up. Every time you level up, it means that there are going to be people who can't come with you because they're not there yet. With every level up that I have experienced, I have lost friends. Some really significant ones. I knew that stepping into this version of myself was going to make me lose my 10-year relationship. And I honestly waited 2 full years to see if there was any kind of compromise that I could make, and there just wasn't. I think that people can get really addicted to staying stuck, staying small, complaining, and just doing what they're told. And I really want a very big, bold, beautiful life. And with that comes a lot of deconditioning and challenging what society tells me is possible. And unfortunately, there are some people that just can't quite get there with me. And so we have a natural end to our friendship. One thing about romantic breakups is that there is always a closing ritual. There's always one or both parties who declares it is done. But friendship breakups don't have that same cord cutting ritual. And sometimes I feel like that is what can hurt even more. Even when there is something incredibly dramatic that happens that you can't quite come back from, there's still not the same clarity that romantic relationships have. Romantic relationships go from partners to not partners, but friendships go from friendship to question mark. Like, is it just less friends? Are you enemies? Are you acquaintances? Like, there's no manual. It could be absolutely any dynamic. Of course, romantic relationships also need to navigate this, but I feel like it's just a little bit more clear cut than it is for friendships. I was really devastated that my 10-year relationship, we do not have a friendship. I feel really bummed that this person knew me for so long, my entire 20s, and they don't want to be my friend. I don't know. That's really heartbreaking for me. But my most recent relationship, we're now really good friends, and it feels really nice, and it's also incredibly healing. I think especially when you're queer and, you build your own family, to have such a pillar of a relationship no longer exist in your life can be really destabilizing. So you might be at this point in the episode where you're like, oh, I might be going through a breakup, but I'm not sure. So here are some signs that a relationship is ending or that it might need to end. Number one, you're feeling very drained after seeing them instead of nourished. You're shrinking or performing to stay liked or loved. Resentment is building, maybe quietly, maybe not so quietly. Communication feels unsafe or worse, pointless. You've outgrown shared habits, but you might feel guilty leaving those. This is a really big one that I notice for people who bond with drugs or alcohol, and when they decide to get clean, they start noticing those friendships are really based on those substances and they can't flourish outside of them. And lastly, your intuition is loud, but you keep on overriding it with logic. You may notice that this list of when you might need to end a friendship also coincidentally aligns with when you might need to end a romantic relationship. One of the biggest things that you can point to is, how do I feel with this person, to help guide you on if you need to have a pretty dramatic break and pretty dramatic stopping of the friendship, or if you can just kind of offer a little bit more distance. If you listen to one of my previous episodes, you know that I put my friends into varsity, junior varsity bench, right? And so maybe there is somebody who was in varsity, but I'm no longer feeling particularly aligned with them. And so maybe I just bump them down to junior varsity, where I don't necessarily spend as much time one-on-one with them, but I still will enjoy seeing them in group settings. So maybe you've listened to that list and you're like, yeah, it's time. I'm ready to end this. That brings us over to the grieving process. And we have our denial, our bargaining, anger, sadness, and acceptance. If you are thinking that it's time, then you might already have gotten to that acceptance point. You might have already quantum leaped there. It's very possible that if you are in the denial stage, it might look like, oh, they're just busy, or they're just having a really hard time, something like that. Maybe bargaining looks like, oh, well, I know that they're having a really hard time right now, so let me just wait until the summer and then I can get back in touch with them. Or maybe it's something like, let me invite them over to my house for coffee and I'll tell them everything that I'm feeling and we can hash it out. And of course, there's a difference, right? I want you to have nuance here, because both of these are good strategies if you have a healthy friendship that is very secure. But if you're coming about it from a very anxious attachment kind of way, then that is not exactly the energy that you want to be in, if that makes sense. And then there's anger, right? And so that might look things like, oh, I've done so much for this person. I've bought them so many gifts. And then there's sadness. There's a lot of sadness with losing friends, because you end up missing a version of them that doesn't exist anymore. I really notice this as a child-free person when my friends have babies, and I'm very excited for them, but of course their priorities are going to change. They have literally taken on the biggest responsibility you can possibly do. And so I'm not going to be able to relate to them in the way that I used to. And ultimately, the grieving process includes grieving future plans that are no longer going to happen. If you and your friend are obsessed with the same TV show or finding ghosts inside of swamps, and then there's a swamp ghost hunting convention that comes to town, like, of course there's going to be that pang that hits your stomach when you're like, ugh, I want to share this experience with this person so badly. And maybe you can have one day where you ghost hunt in the swamp, but maybe you can't. And that's okay as well. You can still enjoy that activity on your own or with a new friend. I can't really talk about this topic without thinking about the biggest friendship breakup that I had in my life. And I get so emotional when I think about it because this was one of my oldest and dearest friends who just kept on choosing drugs over me. And it was so hard because I think I was one of the only people that saw him as not a fuck up. I saw him as a really beautiful soul who was really great at photography, and oh my God, he made the best French toast. We had a really dramatic end to our friendship where he put me in a pretty dangerous situation, and I gave him an ultimatum of that he could either be my friend or he could continue doing drugs, which was, I don't think I navigated it great at the time, but I was a teenager. I didn't know. But he did end up overdosing not that much longer after we ended our friendship. And it's hard not to think about the what ifs. It's hard not to think about if I had a little bit more of an intervention with him, or if I could just kind of like get through to him just a little bit stronger. I have so much sympathy for people who are suffering from addiction because it is such a monster and it destroys so many of the lives of the people around you too. I hate that I'm never going to see him again. I hate that we had this really dramatic end. I didn't get chosen, which very much triggers my various abandonment wounds. And now there's no reparation that will ever happen. It sucks. But honestly, I think that this is a much more common experience than people think. Obviously, my experience was way more on the dramatic side, but I think that there are some times that where people just cannot meet you in having those conversations around closure. And so what do you do when you don't get closure? I have sent my friends so many emails that will never be seen. Obviously, if your person is still alive, then don't send them. But you can send them to yourself so that way you can still kind of get that ritual of hitting the send button without them actually seeing the message itself. I was also doing EMDR therapy for a little while, which I honestly think is time magic, where you get to go back to your past self and have conversations with yourself. So I was able to put my 30s self into my teenage body, and I was able to have a harder conversation than I did at the time, which can feel really healing, especially because time isn't linear. We just experience it very linearly. But if that's too woo for you, even just speaking it out loud, even just saying the things that you wanted to say now can offer that same kind of release that you didn't get previously. And then, of course, very witchy, we can ritualize the ending. So this can be a cord cutting spell where you take 2 candles and a piece of twine and light it and say goodbye. I really encourage you to say goodbye with love and to wish them well, even if it can feel hard, especially if you did have a dramatic ending and they really hurt you. It's still in your best interest to wish them well. I think about the last scene in Ever After, one of my favorite movies of all time, where Drew Barrymore is basically saving Angelica Houston's life. And she says to her, I want you to know that I am never going to think of you after this moment, but I am sure that you are going to think of me every day of your life. And sometimes I think that that mercy can be the best revenge. The best revenge can be living your life in a beautiful, fulfilling, loving way. And when you are tapped into that loving energy, one of the other great practices that you can do is to reflect on all of the things that that friendship has taught you. Again, I think about my friend and his French toast recipe, and now I make French toast the same way that he does. And I think that that's really beautiful. I would hate to lose that recipe, and I would hate to lose those really nice memories just because we had such a sad ending to our friendship. Okay, so you have recognized that it's time to end your friendship. You have gone through the grieving process and you have finished your closure. And then they reach out. I feel like this is common, especially when you do a cord cutting ritual where the other person can feel your energy being taken away. And it can often cause that person to want to reach out, to want to continue to have that cord with you. This is a really sad example, but it's true nonetheless, where victims of domestic violence, when they are in the most danger, it is when they are leaving. And it is because their abuser can feel that energy getting away from them, and the abuser is so desperate to continue to control that energy and to continue to control that person. Hopefully you and everyone you know are completely safe, but on the off chance that you are not, I will make sure that the domestic violence hotline is available in the description. Help is out there as long as you ask for it. Okay, so maybe the previous friend has reached out, or maybe the ghost hunting swamp convention is in town and you are thinking to yourself, should I reach out or just let it go? I want you to ask yourself, if I needed to get an apology, did I get one, or would I get one? Is there mutual effort in preserving and repairing this friendship? Is repair actually possible? Am I just choosing familiarity? This one is a really tough one, especially if you did level up. And sometimes leveling up can be really scary. And part of that scariness is the fact that it can feel so lonely. There's a really big difference between repairable conflict and expired connection. Unfortunately, I think that that is something that you are going to have to come to your own conclusion. But if you do need a little bit of handholding, my discovery call is totally free. If you just want to talk about a situation that you're going through, I'm happy to help as much as I can. Lastly, I want to talk about rebuilding after a breakup. And again, a lot of this advice is both for romantic relationships and also friendships. The main thing is that you need to relearn yourself without them. I think one of the more painful parts about a romantic breakup, especially if you do end up going no contact, is that this was a person that you spoke to every single day. And then to just not do that is really hard. And there are so many friendships that are very similar. It can be really tempting to just want to replace that one friend with a different friend, right? Maybe you asked your previous friend how their day was every day on your lunch break, and now you're doing that same habit, but with somebody different. I really want to encourage you to, instead of replacing the person, replace that habit with something else that can feel a little bit more nourishing to yourself. I want you to feel comfortable with it being quiet for a little while. And admittedly, this is definitely the hardest part. And I would say like where I and other people experience the most resistance. But as you're relearning yourself and relearning your habits, you're going to be experiencing these identity shifts. And that can offer you to be able to make space for more aligned new friendships that will show up in your life. But if you just replace one person for the other, then those new people who are on your new level up won't be able to appear. those new friendships will literally not be able to find you because there is not enough space in your life for them to be invited. And just like a romantic relationship, I want you to wallow. I want you to wallow. I want you to eat an entire tub of ice cream. I want you to watch trashy movies. I want you to be mad and go through all of those stages of grief. And then I want you to be done. And I want you to take those lessons and turn them into growth. So you're going to be asking yourself, what did that friendship teach me about my boundaries, about my standards, about my communication styles? How do you want your next friendships to be different? Again, this is something that we just simply were not taught when we were kids or young adults, that not all friendships are meant to last forever. But that ending doesn't equal failure. Some people come into your life and they are catalysts or they're mirrors or they're initiators. There might be friendships that do real damage, and even if it's not your fault, it is your responsibility to heal from those. And so I absolutely encourage you to seek professional help if you need to, because sometimes it is a lot. I mentioned that I have some real wounds from my first really big friendship breakup. And I'm really glad that I processed all of that through therapy. But I also just want to reassure you that if you are going through a friendship breakup, or if there's one that kind of still haunts you, you are so far from alone. I think most people have had something like this happen to them. And again, it's just not something that's really spoken about. We focus so much on romantic breakups that we forget about these other bonds that can feel just as heartbreaking. I absolutely believe in soulmates in friendship platonic forms. This might be a big tangent, but one of the things that I find such a bummer about the lack of queer media in our society is that we can sometimes look at movies that have intense platonic bonds and queer code them. And sometimes it exists, but I think it's a disservice to think of our friends as not having that same intense bond that we might experience from a romantic partner. A big example that I have is Luca, the Pixar film from 2021. And so many people identified with it, with their own coming out story. And I think it's entirely possible that it is a queer story. But I also don't want to dismiss the idea that there are two boys who have a really beautiful friendship, because I think that we need also those stories in especially children's movies. This podcast was inspired slightly because I saw Mother Mary this past week and I can't stop thinking about it. But I think that this is another one where I think that this movie is about friendship breakups, absolutely. But a lot of people seem to be only focusing on the fame aspect of the movie and also already queer coding the protagonists, which it's very possible. I think that one of the storylines that I was a little bit expecting. No, wait, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. If you've seen the movie and you want to talk about it, you can DM me, but I'm not going to spoil on my podcast. Anyway, I'm so curious if you have gone through a friendship breakup that has completely changed you or altered you, or one that was a little bit more mild, but you could still relate to this episode. Thank you, as always, for being here. I am so eternally grateful for you. You can find all my links in the description, and I absolutely can't wait to talk to you next week.